Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to History Goes Bump Redux. I am your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're winding back to, I think we did this one back in episode 60 something. It's one of our Life and Afterlife, one of our favorite actresses. Really talented all the way around. She could dance and sing too. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn did go down a very dark path at times. And while people claim that she overdosed, maybe accidentally or unalived herself, I think she was murdered.
Ew. Yeah, I actually think the same thing.
History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
No other actress has ever had the notoriety and fame or stirred the emotions quite like Marilyn Monroe. She was a legend in her own time, and that legend has only grown since her untimely death. Not only was her rise to fame epic, but her personal life was a tale fit for the silver screen filled with torrid love affairs that included a president, drugs, scandal, tragedy, conspiracy, and a mysterious death. Such a tumultuous life is hard to completely snuff out, and perhaps Marilyn Monroe's spirit continues to live on in the afterlife, not just in our memories, but as a spirit still walking among us. Join us for the life and afterlife of Marilyn Monroe.
On June 1st, 1926, Norma Jean Mortensen was born in Los Angeles, California, to Gladys Pearl Baker. There is confusion when it comes to who was Norma Jean's father. Her birth certificate has Martin Mortensen as her father, and that is who she was initially named for, but her mother would change the surname to that of her first husband, and that name was Baker. So we're not really sure who her dad was. So we've already got that issue to begin with. Gladys Baker was married to Mortensen, but they had apparently separated before Norma Jean was born. Their divorce would be final in 1928. Norma Jean had been told by her mother that a man named Charles Stanley Gifford was her father. And thus began the tumultuous life of Norma Jean. Norma Jean's mother suffered from mental illness, and so she turned out Norma Jean to the foster system. In 1933, Gladys took custody of Norma Jean back, which was a huge mistake. Norma Jean would witness episode after episode of her mother's mental instability until Gladys was finally hauled off to the state hospital. Norma Jean then went to live with her mother's best friend, Grace McKee. It was McKee who would teach Norma Jean how to get all dolled up with makeup, and she would take her to the movies, and she encouraged her to become a movie star. Grace married when Norma Jean was 9, and I hope she wasn't teaching her how to put makeup on at that age, but maybe she was. And she sent Norma Jean to an orphanage. So it's like, she's like, well, now that I'm getting married, I'm not going to be taking care of you anymore. And so Norma Jean went through 11 families. And at one of those stops, she was apparently sexually abused. Eventually, Grace brought Norma Jean back to her home, where her husband tried to sexually assault Norma Jean several times. You got to just feel for this kid. Norma Jean would be moved in and out of this home several times over the next few years. She spent some time with her great-aunt, Olive Brunnings, whose son would rape Norma Jean. After this, she ended up with an aunt named Anna Lower. Norma Jean would always remember the time she spent with Lower fondly, and later in life, she would visit Lower's grave many times. It seems that this was the only safe place she knew as a young person.
In 1942, Norma Jean moved back in with Grace. She was in high school at this time, and she started a relationship with a boy named James Doherty. Grace and her husband needed to move for a job offer, so Norma Jean was going to be shipped off to an orphanage again. Grace decided to pressure Doherty to marry Norma Jean instead, and he reluctantly did marry her. Norma Jean was barely 16 at the time. In 1943, Doherty joined the Merchant Marines to fight in World War II. Norma Jean moved in with Doherty's mother. Norma Jean got a job at an airplane factory, radioplane munitions factory, and it would be here that her superstar life would begin.
And you can imagine many years later, this Doherty young man would be like, wow, I didn't want to marry her and I was like forced into it. And now all these men would do anything to be with her. David Conover was hired by the Army to take pictures of women working in the factory to promote the war effort. Conover was taken with Norma Jean, how could he not be? And recognized how photogenic she was, and he told her to apply at the Blue Book Model Agency. Within 2 years, Norma Jean had appeared on the cover of 33 magazines and had changed her brunette locks to blonde. She felt abandoned in her marriage, and Grace helped her to obtain a divorce from Doherty. The modeling got the attention of 20th Century Fox Studios, and she was brought in for a screen test. They signed her with a contract that lasted for 6 months and paid her $125 a week, so it was pretty good money for her. Ben Lyon was the Fox executive that would take Norma Jean under his arm and guide her. He suggested that she change her name, so Norma Jean Baker became Norma Jean Monroe. She got the surname Monroe from her mother's maiden name. The name still did not sound right, so they tried getting rid of Norma, but Jean Monroe sounded common. Then Lyon wondered, what about using the name Marilyn? It was lucky since it had double M's. I guess that's a lucky thing to have double letters. And it sounded nice. I mean, Marilyn Monroe. It's like it was just made for her. Norma Jean thought it sounded like Mary Lynn, and she hated that name. But Lyon convinced her, and Marilyn Monroe would become her name, a name that would live on in legend forever.
Marilyn started out as an extra as she took singing and dancing lessons. Her first speaking part came in the movie Scudda Hoo, Scudda Hey. She had one line. Her next movie,
Wow.
Dangerous Years, gave her 9 lines to say. 20th Century Fox did not renew Marilyn's contract and she went over to Columbia. Columbia signed her and gave her a role in Ladies of the Chorus. She then was dumped by Columbia and she decided to go back to modeling for a while. And it was at this time that her infamous nude pictures were taken by photographer Tom Kelly. The year was 1949. What's going on with the light?
And our light just changed. Isn't that interesting? Jerry says, hey, I like Marilyn. Marilyn then signed on with talent agent Johnny Hyde, with whom it is rumored she had an affair. Hyde got her some bit parts in low-budget movies, and then got her an audition with John Huston. Huston liked her and gave her a role in The Asphalt Jungle, playing the mistress to an aging criminal. The film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, and critics took notice of Marilyn and gave her rave reviews. So you could see where these prior movie studios, they just didn't know what they had here. It's mind-boggling. It's like, just based on her looks alone, you would think they'd be like, well, we've got to put her in some stuff. And I don't know, not very smart. Based on this success, Marilyn was given a role in All About Eve. The critics liked her again, and this led to Hyde landing a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox for Marilyn. She also got a nose job at this time. Several films were made by Marilyn at this time with lower budgets and moderate success. So Marilyn decided to take some college courses, and she enrolled at the University of California, studying art and literature. At the time of her death, Marilyn had 400 books in her library. She was not a blonde bimbo by any means. And when I think about it, I feel like she put a lot of that on because that's how you charm people.
Right. Yeah.
So I think she knew what she was doing and was brilliant. And it was just part of her putting stuff on for them. Yes. And it wasn't like she was reading a bunch of, trashy romance novels or something.
No.
Or like cerebral type books that she had. And she collected them. She liked to get the, first editions and things like that. So she really valued books. Then in 1952, those pesky nude photos surfaced in a calendar. Marilyn had given a fake name when the pictures were taken, but people who saw the calendar said the girl sure looked like Marilyn Monroe. Scandal started to percolate, and the studio scrambled for a way to handle the situation. Marilyn was not only beautiful, but she was smart and she handled the situation brilliantly. She told the studio that she was going to tell the truth, and she did. Marilyn explained that she was desperate at the time and needed rent money, and so she posed for the photos for the money. The public sympathized with her, and after they looked at them, they probably went hot diggity. And Playboy put her in their first issue, and thus Marilyn became their first Playmate of the Month.
Baseball player and legend Joe DiMaggio entered her life at this time and would remain a fixture in her life until her death. The two began dating, and Marilyn took on roles in several films at this time, none of which got her much notice. Then came the movie Niagara. This was her first big role, and she played a femme fatale plotting to kill her husband. Critics did not care for her overtly sexual portrayal of her character, but it was this image that she would carry forward on the advice of her makeup artist friend, Whitey Snyder.
I really like that movie too, Niagara. I
Yeah.
don't know, have you seen it?
A very long time ago, but yes,
They filmed it near Niagara Falls, or at least the movie, that's where it's
that's how it's supposed.
situated.
Yeah.
The musical Gentlemen Prefer Blondes came next, and Marilyn got a chance to really shine by singing and dancing. Her memorable rendition of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend is unforgettable. I love that scene. Of course, Madonna was inspired to use that in one of her music videos, but the original is way better. And what makes this even better is that Jane Russell was in it with her. The two women became fast friends, and there's even, I don't know if you've seen when Marilyn is putting her hands in the, what do you call it? The cement at the Grauman Chinese Theater. Jane Russell's right next to her, so they're both doing it at the same time. It's like, oh, how cool is that? Russell learned that Marilyn had a terrible stage fright and that it was the reason Marilyn was always late for filming. So she started escorting her to the set. So I guess she would just kind of talk her up so she wouldn't feel so weird about it. Russell said of Marilyn that she was, quote, very shy and very sweet and far more intelligent than people gave her credit for. Marilyn had fallen into a place of typecasting at this point and could not get serious roles. She starred in the Western River of No Return, and she felt it was beneath her. Her next film was to be with Frank Sinatra, but she did not show up for work, and 20th Century Fox suspended her. DiMaggio and Marilyn got married at this same time in 1954. The marriage lasted a year and ended due to DiMaggio's jealousy, both of Marilyn's fame and his belief that she would cheat on him. Fox lifted Marilyn's suspension, and she starred in There's No Business Like Show Business. Next came The 7-Year Itch, which was one of Marilyn's greatest roles. Such a good movie, too. This one is just, and it's neat because it really shows you her comedic side and stuff, too. And of course, her iconic skirt blowing up scene, it's from this movie. This movie gave Marilyn real power, and she renegotiated her Fox contract and gained creative control of her roles. The iconic skirt scene would lead to the end of her marriage to DiMaggio, however. Apparently what happened, the story goes that, they keep shooting the air up, her skirt goes flying up. Well, there's a bunch of photographers there. They're all taking pictures of this going on. And each time that skirt goes up a little bit more and a little bit more, and all the boys are whooping and hollering every time her skirt goes up. They're taking all these pictures. Well, Joe DiMaggio walks in and sees all of this going on, and he is not happy. So after the scene was done, he took her back to their hotel room, and according to her, he beat her. So thankfully, she decided that, nope, you're not going to do that to me. So she left him after that, and that was the end of the marriage.
Marilyn concentrated heavily on acting lessons, hoping she could do stage work, but her stage fright was too overwhelming. She did win the praises of her acting coach, Lee Strasberg, who said of Marilyn, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of actors and actresses, and there are only two that stand out way above the rest. Number one is Marlon Brando, and the second is Marilyn Monroe.
Can you imagine? And I think she would have been amazing on Broadway, but that stage fright. So it's almost like when she had to do something live in front of people, it was too much for her. Marilyn began dating Arthur Miller in 1955, and I always wondered about this. I guess it's because he was a writer and intelligent, because he's not an attractive man. And, his books are okay, but I guess because I just didn't enjoy reading stuff when I had to read it for school. So, like Death of a Salesman, I wanted to, drive pencils into my eyes reading that thing,
I mean, if it was their person, it's their person.
I guess. In 1956, Marilyn made the romantic comedy Bus Stop, and she garnered a Golden Globe nomination for her performance. The Prince and the Showgirl was her next film, starring opposite Laurence Olivier, and she received international attention for this role. She won the Italian equivalent of an Academy Award for her performance. Miller and Marilyn married this year as well. Their marriage would last 5 years and end after their collaboration on The Misfits. My favorite, absolute favorite Monroe film is Some Like It Hot. Oh my gosh, it's so good. This again, great comedy. Was made in 1959. Marilyn was nearly impossible to work with on the set, however. But Billy Wilder considered the film his biggest success, and it was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. So even though it's my favorite film and I think she did amazing in it, I guess behind the scenes it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Marilyn won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy. Marilyn's health began to deteriorate, and she began heavily relying on prescription medication. She would mix sleeping pills and alcohol. John Huston directed Marilyn's final film, The Misfits. Production was nuts, with Marilyn landing in the hospital for 10 days. The film was not a commercial success at the time, but it is a classic today, with Clark Gable's and Marilyn's performances highly praised. Marilyn won another Golden Globe for the film.
In 1962, Marilyn began filming Something's Got to Give. But she spent much of the time ill, and she was eventually dismissed. At this same time, Marilyn gave a small performance at Madison Square Garden for President John Kennedy's birthday party. She sang Happy Birthday and Thanks for the Memories to the President, which I'm sure everyone has heard.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Jacqueline, listening to that little happy birthday, was a
Not terribly pleased.
happy birthday to you.
On this occasion of your birthday, this lovely lady, Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. Thank you so much. Everybody, happy birthday.
You know that Jacqueline's listening to her sing like that and going, what is happening here? I'm sure she knew.
Yeah.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. Marilyn bought a home at 12305 Fifth Helena Drive in Brentwood, California in 1962. It was the only home she ever owned, and she'd only lived there for 6 months when she died in the bedroom of this home. She loved this home. It was a sweet little cottage, and it was just like her escape from the world, really. Now, the circumstances surrounding her death fall into 3 different categories. We have accident, suicide, or murder. Clearly, everybody knows Marilyn was unfortunately a drug addict who was more than likely self-medicating for, she'd never been diagnosed with this, but people who knew her and modern day definitely seems like she was manic depressive. She definitely would get depressed at times. So I think that's why she was taking a lot of the medication she was taking, is not only was she trying to self-medicate this manic depression, but we also have God only knows how much trauma, because remember what she went through as a child and a young woman. Just awful. And when you've been treated just as this object, and then you become that in your adult life, and that's what you're valued for and everything like that. It's just, I completely understand why she ended up down the road that she ended up on. The medical examiner, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, ruled that Marilyn died of acute barbiturate poisoning. Did she accidentally overdose herself? There's also the possibility that she was poisoned accidentally by an enema that was administered to her that was contraindicated with another drug she was taking. And they're talking about like a regular kind of enema medication, not what we're going to discuss in a little bit here. But supposedly it was almost like it shouldn't go with another drug that she was taking, but clearly she was taking a lot of different drugs. So, and that's how a lot of these celebrities, like a Heath Ledger or what have you, they're just taking so much stuff and there's so many different things that,
Interactions.
that you're just suppressing your system. There are those who think that Marilyn was suicidal and took an overdose of drugs on purpose. People claim that she had been depressed and she had just been recently dropped by Fox Studios, but they had finally reworked her contract for double her salary. So she couldn't have been feeling bad about that. It's like they dropped her and then wanted her back and paid her double. Well, sounds pretty good to me. She also reportedly had just had an abortion. And I believe that according to some of the stories out there, she'd had multiple of these in her life and she'd always wanted to be a mom. So who knows what was going on with all of that. Whitey Snyder saw Marilyn in her final week and said she never looked better and she was really excited about her future. So they were like, no, she was not suicidal. She was not going to, do away with her life. She was talking about projects she was working on and looking forward to them. Nothing about her said, that she was going to commit suicide. Not to mention there was no note sitting there. There are those who think Marilyn was murdered, and clearly we are both on that same line of reasoning here. So, who would murder Marilyn Monroe and why? John and Bobby Kennedy were both having affairs with Marilyn. And while it was just a fling for President Kennedy, Bobby and Marilyn had a very intense relationship. Monroe kept a diary of all her affairs in a little red book. Marilyn was under the impression that Bobby was going to leave Ethel for her. Now, I don't know if he kept telling her that or if it was just her hopes, but obviously that was never going to happen because the Kennedys were Catholic, so you couldn't get divorced. And he had his eyes set on the White House. His brother had been president. He'd been attorney general. His next move was, I'm going to be president too. Not going to happen if you get divorced and you've had an affair with Marilyn Monroe. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and it would look really bad for him if any of this came out. Marilyn kept a diary that we'll never know the contents of, but we imagine there was a lot of information in there that the Kennedys, particularly Bobby, would not want out in the public. And who knows what she was threatening, especially if she thought he was going to leave Ethel. And, if she's feeling a little manic depressive at some point, maybe in a manic phase, she's like, I'm going to go tell Ethel what's going on here or go to the public or who knows. So we have motive. Now let's look at the evidence.
In the book, The Murder of Marilyn Monroe by J. Margolis and Richard Buskin, the authors make claims that actor Peter Lawford, who was the brother-in-law of the Kennedys, confessed that he knew what happened to Marilyn. The authors also had eyewitness testimony from paramedic James Edwin Hall. The story goes that Bobby went to Marilyn's place to break things off permanently. A fight ensued, and a bodyguard with Kennedy gave Marilyn a shot to calm her. Bodyguards then administered an enema with 13 to 19 nembitols and 17 chloral hydrates crushed up in it.
This obviously left Marilyn comatose, and the group left. Now, did they mean to kill her, or were they just trying to put her to sleep? I don't think this was just to calm her, because you could do that with one shot of something. After the housekeeper found Marilyn unconscious, she called paramedics. James Edwin Hall gave Marilyn CPR because she had a weak pulse. He noticed that there was no vomit nor any drug odor in Marilyn's mouth, which is very unusual in overdoses. There was also no water by the bedside. They also did not find any water glasses in the bathroom. So how did Marilyn take up to 64 pills? Not to mention that amount of pills seems almost impossible for a human to take at one time. As a matter of fact, Prosecutor John Miner said it would be impossible for Monroe to have ingested all the pills orally and have them digested before she died. There would have been undigested capsules in her stomach, and they found none. Dr. Ralph Greenson, who was Marilyn's psychiatrist and a man she could also take down because of the affair they were having, arrived on the scene and claimed to be Marilyn's doctor. So Hall let him take over, even though he notices that the doctor seemed to have no clue what he was doing. He's a psychiatrist. He does not know how to save a life. I mean, maybe he knew CPR, but clearly the paramedics going, he doesn't know what he's doing. He then witnesses Greenson take out a huge hypodermic needle, fill it with some liquid, and he put the needle into Marilyn's heart. Marilyn was dead after that. Peter Lawson claimed this happened in the guest cottage and that Monroe's body was moved to her bedroom and placed face down in bed for photographs and to back up the suicide story. And they had to move her quickly because they needed to prevent lividity from showing that she'd been on her back. Otherwise, nobody's going to buy it that she's on her stomach. Pictures showing Marilyn face down in bed back up this story, and it's only common sense that paramedics are going to take a body out of bed and administer CPR unless the person is stone cold dead, and Marilyn was not. So that's the first thing. When I saw pictures of the scene here and she's on her stomach in bed, I'm like, wait a minute. Nobody tried to save her life? Why are they taking pictures of her in bed? Should she not be? I mean, first of all, if you're going to do it in bed, which no paramedic would ever do CPR in a bed, would she not be like face up? So that right there tells me this is BS all over.
Yep. Police arrived at the house after 4:30 a.m. and noticed fresh sheets on the bed and that the housekeeper was washing sheets in the middle of the night, and that there was no water for washing down pills. Marilyn could not take pills without water. She even gagged on them sometimes with water.
That would be me, so I know exactly what the problem is here.
Yep. Diane actually uses applesauce to try to swallow her pills.
Especially if they're big. If they're a horse pill, I have to have applesauce.
Undertaker Guy Hockett arrived around 5:30 a.m. and claimed that Marilyn died between 9:30 and 11:30 p.m. The theories of the first officer at the scene, Jack Clemens, was disregarded. Clemens was removed from the case. His superior got a promotion and ended up running security for the 1984 LA Olympics.
Yeah, so somebody basically gets pushed back to, you could be a pencil pusher, and this guy's going to be elevated because he's going to go with whatever story we tell him to do.
Yep.
Obviously, the first officer is the person you want to talk to because he's the one who comes in and he's looking at everything, and he was the one who's like, okay, there's not enough pill bottles to even have enough pills for her to have taken. I think there was like maybe 2 pill bottles there or whatever. And he was like, where's a water glass?
Yeah.
There should be a water glass somewhere. Police got statements from everyone, but the housekeeper kept changing her story for years. The maid claimed that at 3 a.m., she saw the light on in Monroe's room. When I heard this, I went, well, what is she doing up at 3 a.m.? Apparently, she had a live-in housekeeper. Why would you be up at 3 a.m. and going past her door and seeing the light on? And for me personally, why would you even think about, well, I need to go in there? I would just be like, oh, she must be up and has the light on to watch TV, to read a book.
Use the restroom.
She could have fallen asleep with the light on. The sheets from the bed were washed by the housekeeper. What are we doing here, you know? The maid later claimed she saw the light on at midnight, then corrected it later to 3:30 a.m. for the police report, and then changed it again to 2 a.m. during an interview later. And then in a 1972 interview, she goes back to midnight again. So what time was it? And we all know if you keep changing your story, you're
because
lying.
you can't remember the lie.
Yep.
20
years later, during 2 interviews, she changed her initial story that Marilyn's room was locked to that it was unlocked. The doctor said he had to break a window to get in, and the police noted that there was a broken window. So her room had to have been locked. And why would her room have been locked? Somebody had to have locked it. The coroner found no proof of drugs in Marilyn's stomach, and the only way there would be no residue is if she took the pills over a stretch of time. If she had taken the pills slowly, she would have been dead long before she could have taken the amount found in her bloodstream. There was no evidence she shot up with the drugs. The amount of drugs in her system would have killed 30 people. The colon was exposed to a toxic substance, perhaps an enema. The intestinal mucosa would absorb the drugs this way, and it would do it very quickly. I mean, if you're going to kill somebody, this was a very clever way to do it. So whoever did this knew what they were doing. There was purple discoloration on the intestinal tissue. Maybe a hemorrhage of the tissue could have been damaged by however they administered this. I'm sure it was not like a regular enema. Who knows what they did to her? The autopsy was also not done to protocol. In the end, Marilyn's death was ruled a probable suicide. So he marked it as suicide, probable.
Joe DiMaggio made the funeral arrangements. There was a public viewing, and the coffin Marilyn was buried in was top of the line. It was a hermetically sealed, antique, silver-finished, 48-ounce, heavy-gauge, solid bronze casket that was lined with champagne-colored satin silk. Only 25 people were allowed at the service. Marilyn was buried at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, California, in a pink marble crypt at Corridor of Memories number 24. For 20 years after her death, DiMaggio would have a half dozen roses placed at her memorial 3 times a week.
Maybe you shouldn't have beat her, and she'd still be with you. Said that he always loved her forever, but did not treat her well. But was this truly the end of life for Marilyn on this side of the veil? With so much turmoil in her life while she was living and with such mysterious circumstances surrounding her death, the possibility that she would be at unrest is real. And there is much eyewitness testimony out there about Marilyn's afterlife. She seems to haunt everywhere. She seems to like locations that she still probably holds dear. She visits them regularly, even all these years after her death. Several hotels seem to still be a stomping ground for Marilyn. As we covered in our episode featuring the Roosevelt Hotel, Marilyn had a suite where she lived for nearly 2 years. A mirror that had once been in that suite was moved to a wall in the lower elevator foyer. People claimed to see the reflection of Marilyn in that mirror. The mirror was eventually moved into storage. She's not stuck to just haunting her old mirror, though. She's been seen and felt in her suite, which was room 246. She also has appeared in the Cinegrill, and the scent of her perfume lingers. LA ghost story expert Richard Carradine claims that the ghost of a blonde woman has been seen in the penthouse suites of the Beverly Hilton, and that he believes that the apparition is Marilyn. Hotel guests and staff both have reported seeing her. The Knickerbocker Hotel's bar was a favorite haunt for Marilyn when she was married to Joe DiMaggio. She's still seen at times in the bar, which also is reputedly haunted by Rudolph Valentino. So I wonder if they, chat each other
Hang
up
out.
while they're there.
Marilyn Monroe, of course, has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Many people claim to have seen her apparition at the star's location. Sometimes a pink mist is witnessed, and Marilyn still seems to enjoy the Cadillac she once owned. She has been seen in the vehicle, particularly sitting in the back seat. The Hippodrome on the Santa Monica Pier could be another Monroe ghost spot. She did a photo shoot on the beach and would occasionally visit the carousel in disguise so she could just be among people and watch the children play. She longed to be a mother. There are legends that claim if you visit the Hippodrome late at night and watch the mirrors on the carousel, you just might see Marilyn reflected back at you. She usually looks as though she's sitting on a bench near the gift stand.
Marilyn's gravesite at Westwood Memorial Park has also been the scene of afterlife sightings of the actress. Her ghost has been seen floating above the tomb, and or pictures appear in many photos, which of course could be attributed to a variety of things. Visitors at night are kept from the cemetery by a gate, but people claim to see flashes of light near Marilyn's crypt. Marilyn's former home in Brentwood is where she seems to be most active. Every room has a story about a sighting. Housekeepers claim to hear a woman humming, even though they're alone in the house. Occasionally, the humming turns to soft singing. Items go missing in the kitchen often and are moved around. In the bedroom where she died, she's been seen hovering over the area where her bed was located. Marilyn claimed that the home was the only place where she had felt truly safe and secure. Is that why she still seems to want to stay at this beautiful and charming home? And then I was also paging through this book about celebrity ghosts and notorious hauntings, which I got from Jerry. It says crooner and actor Frank Sinatra loved spending time at the Cal Neva Resort and Casino on the shore of Lake Tahoe. And apparently his ghost is there, but it also says People have seen the ghost of another famous guest who often spent time there, Marilyn Monroe. Her ghost has also been reported in the resort swimming pool she loved to frequent. So, just another hotel where she used to hang out. And there are witnesses who've been at the White House on the tour, and they've reported seeing her ghost walking with that of John F. Kennedy, with whom she was romantically involved. Now, I don't know if she would still be hanging out with him in the afterlife, but maybe.
Marilyn Monroe was so much more than just the blonde bombshell. Her legacy lives on, but does her spirit? Does Marilyn continue to haunt her old haunts? Might you spot Marilyn one day sitting near her crypt or dancing about in a mirror? That
is for you to decide. Such a tragic character, so much more that she could have done. Whatever took her life, it's definitely a shame, but hopefully someday she does find some peace. And we need to go visit her crypt there at Westwood Memorial Park and see if we get a little scent of her perfume.
That would be awesome.
I want to thank you guys for joining us on this Redux. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye. You didn't see.
What'd you do?
You were
Look at
going-
me?
No, you were gone. So I imitated that face.
You think you're so clever.
I am.
And she enrolled at the University of California, stuttering?
Stuttering?
She was stuttering when she went to college.
Biddy, that's all, folks. The Hippodrome on the Santa Monica